So as we're pushing this collar down, it needs to sit underneath our steel. And as you can see here, we've got some steel that's been cut with a razor sharp edge right next to the pipe. You don't want to cut your Kordon collar open, and you don't want to cut your hand open on it, so use caution when you're pulling the collar underneath the steel. Collar should sit under the steel and sitting just above the waffle pod. Take our zip tie, start at about 10 mil up from the bottom and pull it tight. 60 mil collars onto a 40 mil pipe should be pinched on either side and folded around onto themselves. And again, the zip tie at the bottom, about 10 mil up from the bottom to stop breaking that plastic weld. And the other one around the top, pulling it all in nice and tight, being careful not to slip off into any sharp steel if the zip tie breaks. Our Kordon warning tape over the top of that top zip tie and around the top of our collar and over the top of our pipe. This allows everybody to see easily that the pipe's been protected, and even if it's cut off at slab level down the track, we can find the warning tape just under the top of the slab. Able flex slid down onto the top of the first zip tie. Quite often when we're doing penetrations on a job, you'll come across pipes that are close together. In some cases they'll be hard up against each other. Sometimes they'll even be taped or zip tied together. Obviously, to put the collars on, the first thing we need to do is separate those. So cutting our tape off, cutting our zip ties off. There's usually a bit of movement in some of the pipes that will allow you to slide your collar over the top of it. So what we need to do is we need to position our Kordon collars, whether they're as close together as these two are or closer. We need the flange of the collar running down against each other rather than sticking up through the top of the slab. Again, positioning our first one underneath the steel, just above our waffle pod, and installing our zip ties as before. Pulling them tight with your thumb allows you to keep a bit of grip on the pipe. That should help you stop your hand sliding off if the zip tie breaks. It's important to have them facing that way rather than coming up through the concrete. And again, we need to pinch the outside edges of our collar, fold it in on itself before we zip tie the bottom zip tie in. That'll hold it in place. And then we can run our next zip tie around the top. Keeping it nice and close to the top of that collar and making sure it's compressed all the way around. Sometimes if you can't see the back of the pipe, you might have to have a look at it to make sure your zip tie is compressed all the way around. If your pipes are tied together before you start the job, remember that that's how they were placed and that they need to be tied back together when you've finished your job. If when you arrive to site and your pipes were taped together by the plumber, it's important to put them back together when you've finished the job. So you can use the Kordon warning tape to wrap around both of the pipes if they're too close together to get it in around each pipe on its own. And once you've done that, you can put your Able Flex back over the top, back down to the top of the first zip tie.